and I was here for a reason. But I was scared that if I tried, I'd fall. So where do I go now that I'm in it?
Alright, so the Creation of Wing Chun. This is a scholarly text. Barely has any contributions from Dr. Lung Ting, who does art history work, but he's in here. He's in the references. He's legit. But there's just so much else to cover now. He's no longer on one of the four sources. Benjamin Judkins and John Nielsen, nice work. And they mention that there are more fluent English-speaking Chinese scholars that are translating stuff that we've never heard of, and they're putting it into these texts. So let's keep it coming. What I'm going to read today has to do with the fight against communism, or fascism, or dictatorships, rogue political nonsense where Ghafla and lies make people think it's real, and they do sensational stuff, right? If you can make someone believe sensational, phenomenal things, you can get them to do the greatest travesties on earth. Voltaire or somebody said that. So, trying to stop that. And our most famous grandmaster of them all fled the communist because he was intelligent, he was law and order Republican like me, and so they chased him down. He fled his family. He created a secret martial art in case they jumped him as a group. So he had a secret martial art he didn't teach anybody else because he did not know who was a communist saboteur lying to him. Oh yeah, Sifu, you're the best. I'm on your side. That's how his name was on a list. So let's listen to what kind of happened there in our beloved China. If you want to follow along, I'm on page 114, right at the bottom. This period of revolutionary fervor also saw increasing levels of political radicalization within the Hong Sing Association. So within their own martial art, records indicate prior to the 1911 uprising, a number of Hing Sing members and leaders joined Sun Yat-sen's Revolutionary Alliance. These included Li Shu and Kuai Wei-fang, who were both instructors within the organization. So they drew their same political support from the same groups at Hong Sing schools, i.e. local workers, clerks, and shop owners. All right, now let's move down. Well, the Chinese reformers initially favored either a constitutional monarchy or a republic. These hopes soon faded. Various military officers and strongmen began to seize power around the country, and there was even an abortive attempt to institute a new dynasty. Read that again. Their hopes for a constitutional republic faded because of strongmen who seized power. More troubling was the increasing level of political division within the reform movement itself. The disastrous results of the Versailles Treaty ending World War I brought the most basic goals of the new country into question. All right, and it gets to this whole thing how Wilson's 14 points really failed them because they sent a bunch of troops to do work and they didn't get anything out of it. So they don't trust the Western systems. All right, we're down at the bottom. At this point, a number of Chinese intellectuals decided that the Republican democracy was a fundamentally flawed form of government and nothing to be emulated. So at some point they decided the way that we're trying to do it was no longer what they were going to do, fundamentally flawed. In their search for an alternative, they began to study the basic principles of Marxism. It wasn't long before the Soviet intelligence agencies learned of this and sent handlers to China to aid in the increasing Marxist study groups and eventually two different political parties, both modeled along Leninist lines. Now, before I turn the page, obviously this is a parallel to modern political parties, and you're going to easily say Democrats, communists, Republicans, conservatives. And I'm a libertarian, right? So, and I'm an environmentalist, so I have feet in all of these tanks, so don't put me in any one of them. And libertarians have earned the privilege of being nonpartisan. Thank you. But it really does. If the shoe fits, you really got to wear it with your strongmen. And you no longer believe the system works, so you're trying to break it. Who is that describing right now? Don't let these names fool you. Marxist study groups, right? At least it has an M and an A in similarity to study, and it was sent over by the Soviets, which would mean sent over by the Russians. All right, you with me? These two parties were named the Guomindang or National Party, the GMD, and the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. Well, so if you want to pick a side, it's pretty easy. I don't want to be in the Communist Party. I'm going to be in the Nationalist Party. These two institutions, sometimes in alliance, more often in conflict with each other, have dominated the nation's political destiny up to the present day. Same with us. Top of page 116 here. Well, the Soviets obviously prefer the idea of a communist neighbor. Their own doctrines of historical progression argue that China first needed to become consolidated, industrialized, capitalistic state before the so-called proletariat had any chance of achieving a class consciousness. All right, very familiar to the USA. National Party leadership would advance this process. At some future date, the real Communist Party would then step forward and lead a revolution. The Soviet government armed and advised both political groups, both contributing in no small way to a bunch of brutality in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So let's pause there for a minute. So they used an obvious label, said who they were, and then they had this other thing they called nationalism, which we will find out later is how they collected the lists on all the good people. I'm going to skip a bunch of this stuff. You have to buy the book yourself. But we're going to come down here. So let's pause there for a minute. So they used an obvious label, said who they were, and then they had this other thing they called nationalism, which we will find out later is how they collected the lists on all the good people. All right, so we've had this happen just now in the USA. We've had the Russian influence on the National Rifle Association. They gave them money. They had Maria Butina go around with John Bolton and bring all this money from Russia into the political campaign. They knew it was illegal, but they knew that they could take it to court for 25 years, and then when it was all over, say, oh, okay, well, now we know it's illegal. They knew it was illegal the whole time, and they got caught. But it was an elaborate sting by the Soviets. The KGB people are good, right? Because later, when we need John Bolton to spill the beans on Donald Trump, guess what they had? Pictures of him taking Maria Butina around to the entire National National Rifle Association. Where'd they go? They're bankrupt now. They couldn't go to court after all that, right? They took money from Russia and gave it to the Trump campaign. So they folded, right? So the National Republican Party was just a Trojan horse for these other players. And we know Trump was a Clinton Democrat, so it wasn't a big surprise. Now you're going to say, well, but then that means that the Democrats must be the CCP. Maybe back in the 90s, but a whole nother uprising has gone against that, right? So this is Stacey Abrams' party now. This is not whatever the handlers thought they were handling, which is why it turned into this kind of sabotage them in Ukraine thing. So when they got the red hats on and they're hypocrites and they're just trying to destroy our way of government, you can go right back to what they decided when the communists took over China, which is fascism. And they're not even the bad fascism anymore, maybe. They've gone through whatever that was, and now they're a real people's republic. This is what it probably looks like, right? Unfortunately, in reference to what we're doing, it looks pretty bad, right? Because they're going against the corporatism and the wage slavery that the corporate oligarchies have, right? The proletariat's trying to rise up against that, and they have all the proletariats pitted against each other, right? You can't rise up that way. You're not black, Jeff. What? That's why no one's listening to me? So they got to keep it separated, Hummingbird agrees. All right, so our grandmaster from China, he had to flee this stuff because they have elaborate mechanisms of destroying your mind. I can't talk against it. All right, I can't eat bullets, so you have to go on the run from this stuff, and then people eventually have to go, oh, we don't listen to those people. When they talk like that, you punch them in the mouth. What? Yeah, didn't I just tell you what happens? How many million people got to die in a gulag? Because you wouldn't punch some asshole in the mouth? So listen up. We're going to start punching people in the mouth. You come up in with, I don't need to wear a mask. You're not going to finish the sentence if you are supposed to be wearing a mask in there, and you come in to do a civil disobedience. We know that the farthest step that nonsense leads to is you idiots and stormed the Capitol and said, oops, oh, we were supposed to stay outside. I know, but it was so exciting. You were supposed to stay outside and have your trial on the lawn and show us the evidence, and you could have hung Nancy Pelosi if you had any. But you didn't. That's why you had to make a mess of things and count on the mess as you cover up, and that's why we just punch you in the face now. I don't need the mess. You got it? You know who you are. And if it ain't you, then when you stuff comes out of your mouth, you can defend it with evidence, with other people that are reputable, right? Oh, you guys got me so mad. Read this stuff, what we fled, and then you guys infested Wing Chun with it now too. I have to pick, all the Wing Chuns are good. No, not that fascist communist stuff. That's a front. Get out of here. Spell his name right. Internet personality, mon.
No one seems to think that I fit in, but I don't wanna be like them. No, 'cause I don't wanna be like them. 'Cause I know that I had a dream that someday I would just fly